Paul, I'll let you take it away.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, you guys, for just even caring about what I've done here. I appreciate it. I was thinking kind of there are two main sort of, I don't know, through lines or themes or whatever to what I was going to share today. And the first is just the general how I edited, manipulated, and sampled the audio from the MTV Music Generator sample pack to arrive at this thing. And then the second is what has become fairly recently my approach to mixing. And I think I used to mix in a more traditional way. I'd put EQ and compressors on every track and use the sends and returns, to add reverb and delay. And I'm glad I learned all that. But I think for me and my OCD tendencies, like that approach took forever. And I've realized that I get better mixes if I can get to something that sounds good as quickly as possible. And the faster I can get to something that sounds good, the more I found that I'm listening to the big picture and not getting hung up on small details, and getting that perfectionist mentality as we discussed on the call last night. So this has meant gravitating towards plugins that sound good, but are like super simple and immediate. And basically that have very few knobs, very few sliders to adjust. And also gravitating towards plugins that are smart enough to analyze audio and then get me to a starting point using its smarts, intelligence, whatever, for EQ or compression or whatever it is, so that it gets me a point where then I only have a handful of knobs and sliders to tweak to my liking. So at the end, I end up with fewer decisions to make. But the decisions I make are still important for the overall mix, but there are fewer of them to make. And so that's kind of become my mixing philosophy. And I guess I feel like with that approach, my mix decisions are more about how things sound and feel, and not me getting hung up on, like, does the snare drum sound better with a 1 dB boost at 1K or a 1.5 dB boost at 2K? Because I've done that, and it's it just, I get in the weeds and I'm not listening to the big picture anymore. So when I figure, if computer software is smart enough to help me down the path, then by all means, I'm going to let it do that. So anyway, and I'll show examples of all that when I get to it. Anyway, so I guess I'll start just by playing the whole thing, just as a reminder of what this monstrosity sounds like, and then I'll kind of break it down. How's the sound quality?
It's great.
Yeah?
Sounds amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. The stereo works, huh?
Oh yeah, it sounded super clear. It was great.
Nice. Okay. So I guess, I'll start with the intro. I mean, basically what I grabbed, I think the very first thing I grabbed, was this acoustic guitar sample. And I always think it's cool to reverse stuff. So then I reversed it. so it sounds like this. Of course, this is with effects, which I'll cover later, but wait, where is it? Oh yeah, and then I pitched it so that there was some kind of chord change to it. So I just alternate the original tone plus, 4 half steps down or whatever it is. But strangely, that sample does not cover a full bar. So you can see how short it is. So then I found this synth. It's basically a single synth note. You just use that to establish the root note of the chord. So then it sounded like this, and I just panned each to the side. Whoops, sorry. Anyway, so that was kind of the start of it, and that established all my chords. And then, I think what I'll do is go to the drums, because I think I'm probably going to spend the most time talking about that. So I'm going to go to the kind of the A section where it all kind of kicks in. And then
I'm going to jump in and say, I can't believe how amazingly different that sample was after you manipulated it. Because when you played the original clip, it was this weird memory unlock, because I haven't heard that guitar loop in 20 years. But when you played it by itself, I was like, oh shit, that's it. I remember that. But then when you showed, okay, then I put this to the root note and I reverse in this, and then it was unrecognizable in a very good way.
Nice.
Like that.
Awesome.
I just couldn't believe that, you were able to change it that much. So.
Oh,
good
cool.
job. That's
Thanks.
cool.
Thanks. So from here down to here are my drums, which it looks like insanity to me, but that's what it is. Basically, I guess I could have taken these drum hits and put them into the Ableton sampler and then played them as MIDI, but for whatever reason, sometimes my brain just thinks in terms of audio. So I literally just laid down kick drums. You can see this green track is just kick drums on the grid. And then to give it at least a little bit of dynamics, I duplicated the track and then dropped down certain hits to the second track and then lowered the volume a little bit. So basically it, actually, let me just mute all this.
Oh, to give it a sense of velocity?
Yeah, exactly. Because since
Okay, cool.
I wasn't playing with MIDI, so I just wanted those 2 little hits there to be lower in velocity. So basically, so it sounded like this. And then I've mentioned, I think in Discord or whatever, that I really like to layer drums, especially snare drums. And I'm a big fan of layering drum machine hits with acoustic drum hits, because I feel like they're come from different worlds, and they have different qualities, generally speaking, and they just complement each other and end up sounding fuller than either one by themselves. So this is the 909 snare. And then this is the whatever acoustic drum hit. So then together they sound like this. And then I found this kind of brush slap thing, because I wanted sort of a different snare drum sound to hit on the kind of the little grace notes, so that it adds a little bit more of a sense of dynamics to it. So that's this. So then the snare drum sounds like this. And then with the kick drum, I kind of was going for a basic breakbeat sort of pattern. And then similarly, I wanted to add hi-hats. So I had this hi-hat, but I wanted to alternate it with a different hi-hat sound, so that it didn't have that kind of machine gun, hearing the same sample over and over again sound. So I alternated these 2 hi-hat samples. And then the extra little bit I added was this crash cymbal, this little reverse thing, or this little metal clank thing, and then this little reverse thing. So then all together, the drums sound like this. And amusingly, originally I had that MTV sample pack is so deep. I had grabbed so many samples, and I wanted to make this really complex beat, and I added all these. These are my tracks at the top here are all my rejects, but this is originally what I had beat wise. But once I decided that this was gonna be sort of guitar power chord based, I realized no one's gonna hear that shit. So I kind of weeded it all out to just the single kick drum, basically. So I guess maybe what I'll talk about is the plugins on these drums. So here's my very long chain of plugins. So with the plugins, sounds like this, as you heard. And this is what it sounds like, completely dry. I get great satisfaction out of taking drums and making them sound big. So that was kind of what I was going for here. I just like big drums. And so to start, this first plugin, this is a tape emulator plugin. It's one of the Abbey Road plugins from Waves, I think.
I love it.
Oh, do you really? Nice.
Yes,
nice.
One of my go-tos.
I figure if it's good enough for the Beatles, it's good enough for me. But I had, for the longest time, I never really worried about adding tape saturation and tube distortion and all this stuff. But I kind of became really interested in that just in the last year or two. And I watched a YouTube video that was saying, a good way to go is to add a tape plugin and then a tube plugin on every track so that you're simulating your audio coming off tape and then running through tubes. And so anyway, so I started doing that and I kind of like it. I mean, this is pretty subtle, but it adds, I tend to not use it super, intensely, I guess. But let me turn all this off.
We can't see the plugin window. Oh, wait. Oh, there it is. I see it now.
Is it here? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll just turn both of these on. So this is the BB Tubes plugin, also from Waves. And as I mentioned, well, I guess I should say, I like simplicity. And what I've realized with this tape one, even though it's got a lot of shit going on, I found that this arrangement of buttons is what I like to hear. So all I got to do is decide how hard it's hitting the plugin with this right here. That's all I do with it, and makes me happy. And then this one. This side, this knob is just adding warmth. This knob is adding kind of a little bit of distortion. And so those two together, it sounds like this. This is without. And then with. Oops. So it's subtle, but I feel it adds a little something. Then this is getting into the kind of the smart plugins. So I downloaded a while ago the Focusrite Fast bundle. Comes with an equalizer, a compressor, a sidechain compressor, and a reverb, I think. Anyway, I mainly use the equalizer and the sidechain compressor. But basically, I'll demonstrate. Just duplicate that. Basically, you set this to what you want. In this case, drums. You hit this learn button, you play your audio through it. It ends up being, I guess about around 100. Then you decide you want warm or bright or neutral. Usually I like it neutral, and then I just bring this down to my liking, and that's it. My equalizing is mostly done, and then they have this like super simplified view, but I usually get in the detailed view, and it's not smart enough to know when kick drums are sounding kind of boomy, so I tend to roll off some low end. Sometimes I'll add a little around 1K or 2K to just give a little snap to the snare. But anyway, that's it. I like this because I get at least close to something sounding good in about however long that learn process took.
So do you know what that learn process is doing? Is it trying to get it to a neutral EQ?
I think what it's doing is, my guess is it's finding where the resonant frequencies are in the sound you're feeding it, and then it's giving those a boost so it'll pop in a mix. And then this slider is basically how much is it's scaling that whole curve based on this slider. That's my understanding. Cool. And then it changes the curve, of course, based on if you want warm, neutral, or bright. Anyway, so that's the first of my kind of smart plugins. And then this is to me is like the ultimate shortcut plugin. I like this whole Chris Lord Algae bundle of plugins. And it's kind of a different way of thinking about. It really is like the ultimate shortcut. They've got a drum one, a bass one, an electric guitar one, an acoustic guitar one, and a vocal one. And so I just run all my drums through this thing. You decide how hard you want it to hit the simulated circuitry. I think Chris Lord Algae has this like a simulated 1176 and LA2A and whatever, various classic, gear. And so this is, I think, some of that kind of tonalities baked into these things. At least it sounds like it to me, but I don't really know. Anyway, so you decide how hard you want it to hit. You've got these really basic kind of 3 choices for which high-end frequencies you want to boost, 3 choices for which low-end frequencies you want to boost. You adjust this to add however much compression you want. You've got a gentle compressor, like kind of a hardware compressor, and a brick wall compressor. You've got basically a studio reverb, a bigger reverb, and then a bigger reverb. And then you just adjust these sliders to taste. So this is without. And then with. So that's the, okay. And then the next thing I had is usually if I feel like the drums are sounding kind of wimpy, I will add a reverb just to the whole kit. And usually it's like a live room simulation. This is quote unquote Studio B, I guess they call it. Or I'll add like a drum plate, one of those. And then what I really like is when that reverb tail hits a compressor and everything just sounds like it just hits so much harder. So this is before reverb and compression. And then this is with both. So I feel like that's where a lot of the bigness, if you will, comes from, is from those two. And then this.
Can you go into the reverb tail hitting the compressor?
Yeah, just explain it, or?
Yeah, could you just explain that?
Yeah, so the reverb by itself is just, so I basically just put this on, I decide how wet I want it. So this is just with the reverb without the compressor. There's no reverb. So it already adds some size to it. But then, if you set your compressor so the threshold is just low enough to be hitting both the snare and the reverb tail on the snare, rather than that snare reverb tail just trailing off immediately, you get a little more sustain to it, I guess. So it's almost, it's not unlike the gated snare sound of the 80s, but maybe, rather than gating, I'm just compressing. So yeah, so you can just hear that the tail on the snare sounds more like instead of, That's without. Does that kind of address what you're asking, Zach?
Yeah, that was exactly it.
Okay, cool. And then I think this is maybe a little less conventional, but I find that when I hit a drum with drums with a compressor, it tends to just dull the high end a little bit. So then I just put on another fast reverb or fast equalizer, a fast EQ basically, and just more gentle. And anyway, it just kind of brings back a little more pop to the drums. That's without. Anyway, so that's kind of how I get the drums. I know I had said, Zach, that we should leave questions at the end, but I wonder if it's worth, since we have such a small group, does anyone have questions about the drums?
I'm actually curious, when you were making the drums, at what point did you bring the effects in? Are you you bring those in pretty early on to get the sound that you want, or are you programming the pattern first?
I program the pattern, like this whole arrangement was completely done, but then right after that, I start mixing the drums because I find, it's funny because I think in this state, people always say, well, you write, and then you mix at the very end. But like I'm always going back and forth because I find that if I get things sounding good, I feel more inspired to keep adding stuff. And drums to me are a big part of things sounding good. So, at the very least, I'll mix the drums, and then maybe I won't mix anything else until the very end. So, yeah. Any other questions at this point? Okay. So the next I'll go to the bass. I don't really love this bass in hindsight. It's kind of this electric bass thing that I also just chopped up, just like I did with the drums. In hindsight, that kick drum is so big that I kind of wish I'd gone with something with a little bit more of a sub bass quality to it. But it just gets masked by the kick drum for the most part, and then it's matching what the power chords are doing, so it just doesn't stand out at all. I guess it kind of adds a little low end, which is maybe that's all it needs to do. I don't know, but whatever. So similarly, I added some auto tune to it because I felt like it was a little out of tune. I added my tape and my tube. This is the Chris Lord Algae bass plugin. Same thing. It's got you decide how hard you want it to hit all the simulated circuitry. You got your basic EQ, your basic compressor. You can add some sub bass, but not a ton. I do like it's got this built-in 3-choice distortion thing. So this is what I've got, but you can go to these other two. Anyway, I just really like how immediate these plugins are. Oh, and then you can add 3 different kinds of chorus just to kind of fatten it up a little bit. And then similarly, I use this. Oh, I didn't really talk about this before, but this is a Sonible, part of the Sonible bundle that Zoe had kind of turned me on to. Just like the Focusrite stuff, you hit this button, it analyzes your audio, and then at the end, you've got 5 things to adjust. You've got your ratio, your threshold, and these 3 things that sort of change the tonality of the sound. And I'm really liking the way it sounds, and I really like how simple and fast it is. That's that. And then, this is the Focusrite fast sidechain compressor. They call it fast reveal. And in this case, it's not doing a ton just because it's like I said, the kick drum is so big, but I do like to use that in general on bass. And then another instance of the fast EQ. And then, this is interesting. So this is another one of the Sonible bundle. So it's another EQ that analyzes your audio. You put it on at one instance of this plugin on everything that you want to balance. Then within one instance, you can see every other instance that's on every other possible channel. And then you prioritize, like, so my vocal hook I put on the top here because that's supposed to be in the foreground. I've got various guitar and synth bass kind of in the medium kind of area. And then things that are supposed to be in the back are in this bottom row here, basically. And then it just tries to figure out what sonically where everything should go in a really good, it just tries to balance everything out. And then sort of like with the Focusrite thing, you've got this impact thing where you just decide how extreme do you want it to go. And you just slide this up and down until it sounds good. And then you go into every individual instance and tweak from there. And I haven't completely figured this out yet, so I'm only using it in conjunction right now with the Focusrite Fast bundle. But I do like that you can kind of pick here the sort of the frequency center of each sound so that each sound kind of has its own place in the mix. And then you can decide like the width, I guess the Q as you'd call it. It's like how much space you want to take up frequency wise. So again, very quick. Yeah. And then what's next? Oh, I guess I'll go to the power chords. So this is basically I just found this single. Oops. found that hit, chopped it up, pitched it to follow my chords. So it sounds like this. And then similarly, to give it a sense of dynamics, I just made a second track and lowered the volume on the second track so that alternating hits wouldn't, all sound like they're at the same level. This part always makes me laugh a little bit because it makes me think of CNC Music Factory, which I guess is also from the 90s, so maybe that's appropriate. I don't know. But plugin wise here, same string of the tape emulator, the tube emulator. This is the Crystal Algae guitar plugin. You've got all different distortions, but I didn't really add any because obviously the sample already had distortion on it. EQ section, compression, reverb. You've got, various delays you can put on, and then a chorus effect. So this is without, oops. And then this is with. And then another instance of the smart compressor, another instance of the fast EQ, and then another instance of the Sonible Smart EQ. So just make it all fit. So then this is where we're at. Oh yeah, and then this thing is also this thing that was in the intro. That's kind of running throughout that A section. It's not really that exciting, so I won't really talk about it. And then also the acoustic guitar sample running through this section. So in this situation, I used the Crystal Algae acoustic guitar version of the plugin. Basically very similar to the electric one, just no distortion, and it doesn't have like a chorusy. Yeah, it doesn't have like a chorus thing to it, but it has more reverb options. So. Yeah, and then another smart compressor, another fast EQ. Oh, and then this is a plugin that I bought recently from Baby Audio, Spaced Out. It's kind of a really dramatic reverb and delay. And honestly, I haven't learned it yet. I have no idea what this interface is. I don't know if these are delay times. I have no idea. But anyway, it's cool sounding because this is without. And then with. And honestly, this one I just ran through the presets, and so it's not something that I liked. But hopefully I'll learn that a little better. And then another instance of the smart EQ. So let's see where this is. And then getting to the vocal hook. Give me the rhythm. 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 So this is running through the Crystal Algae vocal plugin. I have it running through Filter Freak to give it kind of that little bit of a radio effect. Echo Boy, I don't know if you guys have that. It's awesome for delays. And then this, I had an instance of Baby Audio spaced out on it, but it just sounded too crazy and washed out. So then I switched to the Waves plugin and just put a big chamber on it. And then, and then the Smart EQ. So that sounds like this. And then, and that delay, I just put I think, what did I do? Oops, where is it? Okay, half note and quarter note, basically, alternating sides. So then, I think I mentioned this to Cam in a text message, but it just felt like there was a giant hole. So I found this Come On sample. And then I wanted it to hit that high note. So I just pitched it way up until it hit that note. So then that just plays off the Give Me the Rhythm thing. And then again, similar string of plugins, but this time I used, for whatever reason, the Ableton delay, which I really like. I just like how quick it is. You know, similarly, very few things to adjust. And I like that you can play with this kind of filter to get the delay frequencies where you want them. So, okay, so that's kind of the A section. And then the only thing that is added to that when the A section comes back later is this lead, which sounds like this. Oops. So again, I just found single notes, edited, put them in as audio, pitched them. Since it's just such a simple melody, I just pitched each note. This is pan to the left. And then I found this, whatever sound this is, pan to the right. Kind of a synth brassy sound, I guess. So I had this, felt like it wasn't cutting enough. So I took this bottom track, pitched it up an octave, and added it in the middle.
And Paul, when you say you just pitch the samples, do you mean you click on the sample and you do the frequency adjust?
Yeah, literally just go in here and this pitch knob here. And yeah.
You never change the warp mode on it. You just leave it on like the default.
I think I default, if it's musical, I change it to tones, and if it's a drum hit, I change it to beats.
Oh, okay. You never change it to complex pro, or?
I do, only if I feel like it sounds like crap for whatever reason, then I'll try the complex or complex pro. But I try to get away with the less CPU intensive option if I can.
Got it. And if I could you just back up a second?
Yeah.
For the vocal sample that you auto-tuned, were you using an auto-tune plugin for that, or was that something that was built in?
I was using. Oh yeah, I was actually. Wait. Oh, where is it? Oh yeah, I was actually using auto-tune. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then I did the same thing with the, I think with the bass I had mentioned. Oh, I guess I had put a chorus on here too. Yeah. So I have the Waves pitch plugin too, but I haven't really used it. And I guess Ableton added one too, but I haven't tried it.
Cool.
Yeah. And then I guess effects-wise here, I think the main thing is another instance of this spaced out plugin. So this is without. And then with. Yeah, so anyway, so then it sounds like this. So that, I think that's most of the A section. Then for the B section, I really wanted it to change quarterly, and also I'd like to mix, if I'm going to have something that's sort of somewhat driving or whatever, aggressive, I guess. I really like to change it up to do something that sounds, maybe a little prettier for the alternating section. So that I kind of always knew I wanted to do something with pads just to give it that sort of emotional lift. So I think I started with this. So this, I finally wised up. I found this rich string sample, dropped it into the Ableton Simpler plugin so I could play it with MIDI. I played this with Chords. And then just to give it a little more, I don't know, texture, I guess, I found this flute hit, did the same chords. So then ended up with this. But this, you can guess this is a recurring habit of mine. I just felt like it wasn't cutting enough. So I took this string track, duplicated it, bumped it up an octave, and then it sounded like this. And then I think, again, use spaced out, which is added. So without, it's this. And then with. So that's the pad. And then
did you have some type of noise gate on those flute hits?
Oh, you know, I think that delay is coming from, I think it's coming from this. Are you talking about the little bit of delay you're hearing on it?
It kind of sounds like a trance gate on it when they first hit.
I think it may be just the there's such an extreme delay on there. Maybe I'm guessing is what you're hearing.
Maybe. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think there's some sort of. I guess I didn't put delay from there. Yeah, I think it's all coming from that spaced out plugin, which, nice. Like I said, it's kind of a mystery to me. I just said, oh, that sounds good. So, okay. And then actually, let me back up and talk about the bass. So the bass I completely changed for this section because I found this like kind of filtered sustained bass thing. And I really like filtered basses. So I just, again, took the audio, pitched it to match my chords, and then, you know, that was basically that. And then for this first half of this section, before the electric guitars come in, I wanted to hear that filter sweep more. So again, I duplicated the track, pitched it up an octave. And then when I felt like it was kind of occupying the same space as the power chords that come in after that. So I kind of dropped it out once that comes in, but we'll get to that. But then I will say, so this is the bass and the drums together. So this is the fast reveal, the sidechain compressor. And that, I feel like this is a better example, but without, this is the two together. And then with. Anyway, I just feel like they sit together a little better with the sidechain compression. And then what else? Oh yeah, and then the next, it comes in that power chord thing. This, I just took the riff wholesale basically, and then just pitched it to match the chords. So it's handling. And then I think the last element here is this arpeggiator, which is this. Oh, wow, I went crazy. So basically, I found that thin digital sample, as it was called, dropped it into Ableton Simpler, put the Ableton arpeggiator in front of it, played some chords, did my usual string of plugins. Actually, sometimes I like the Ableton chorus. I put that on. Sometimes I use the Chris Lord Algae guitar plugins on stuff just because it's fast and I like the way it sounds, even if it's not a guitar. So I did that. And then, just put a eighth note and dotted eighth note delay on it, you know, ping-ponging, and then a very large hall reverb on it. So without all this, it sounds like this. And then with, and then in context. Anyway, I think that is all of the tracks. I kind of didn't want to bore anyone, so I sort of may have rushed through some things. So I don't know if anyone has anything they want to talk about more or ask about.
Yeah, it's great. I think a really good takeaway that hopefully we can get other people to watch this recording, when it's done. But the way that you did the separate stems or layers or whatever you want to call them of the different the velocity, so that it has some like dynamics in it, that I think can probably made it go a hell of a long way to that extra bit of polish that this track has. You know what I mean? It's a really cool trick that I just never thought of doing that before.
I think, like I said, most people probably would have done it with MIDI and then had even more, velocity sensitivity range.
Yeah.
But like I said, for whatever reason, I was in audio mode.
It's a good way to do it, especially if you're doing it at a grid like you were. Like, I mean, it's easy enough just to snap it in where you want to go and change it.
Yeah, I think something about being able to see all of this versus really thin lines of MIDI notes. I don't know. It just appeals to me more, at least as far as a beat goes.
Yeah, I like it.
Now, do you have any automation on this?
Absolutely none.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the way that you layered it, it was kind of like automation by layers in a way.
Yeah. I mean, I get a little lazy about automation, and honestly, if I do want, I mean, you're probably sensing this is a thing with me, but if I do want automation, sometimes I'll just duplicate the track and then make the other track louder. You know what I mean? So it's
right.
I don't know, this whole business of like, wait, how do you do that?
Well, I mean, you've also got, a good amount of side chain compressors and stuff like that, and that's, I mean, really a form of automation its own way,
Yeah. Just that I can't even remember now how you do it, but that view where you've got the lines going through every track and it's showing you your volume levels and pan level, whatever. My brain can't handle it.
And then what about is there anything on your master track?
Oh, yeah. Quite a bit, actually. This is pretty dramatic. So again, that YouTube video, I said put one more tape emulator and one more tube emulator on your master bus. So I kind of liked that idea, so I've been doing that. And then there's this plugin, this Greg Wells plugin. It's tone centric. It's called. It just adds like some kind of upper harmonics, like kind of harmonic distortion, I guess, to the whole mix. I was putting that on every track, but I'm kind of feeling like the Sonible compressor is already making it sound good enough to me. But it's almost like an exciter, I guess. And then I put Ozone on it. And again, relying on the smarts of this plugin, you hit this button, it analyzes your whole mix. And then I'm just changing 6 variables. I pick which of these genres, kind of fits my EQ curve I'm going for most closely. Usually for me, it's EDM. And then you adjust how hard the EQ is hitting it, or, how extreme you want the EQ to be, how much compression, how much sort of stereo, I don't know, how much widening you want to happen. And then honestly, I don't even know what stabilizer does. I just adjust it until it sounds good. And then I think it has something to do with the low end. But anyways, so watch, it's going to get a lot quieter in a second here. So this is just without anything on the master. And this is with. Anyway, so yeah, I like Ozone because again, it does a lot of the work for me,
Oh, that's great. And so you're not using any effect sends, it looks like?
None, because I used to. In fact, is there even that's funny. These are the these are the ones that just default on every Ableton session. They're not even being used because I've gotten into this mode of just adding stuff on per channel, and also because like this Chris Lord Algae plugins, sometimes this reverb that I add with this slider is enough. So I don't need to use a send. It's just happening through this plugin.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it just reduces the number of choices. And it's if I can get my mix close with these fewer options, I can always later decide, I want to get more creative, or I want to put a more extreme reverb on, and I can disable this, But like I said, I just like getting in the ballpark of a good mix really fast.
Since you
the CLA stuff seems to do a lot of heavy lifting.
It does.
They sound great.
They are really good. I've got the bass one also, and I definitely used it in a pinch, and it always comes through.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I just like how quick it is, and it's I fiddle with 5 sliders, and I'm like, okay, that sounds good.
So going back to that theory or idea or whatever you want to call it, of the adding the tape saturation and like the little bit of the tube saturation, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of the Waves NLS plugins?
Not, if I have, I don't remember the name. Not by name, but what is it?
So NLS is, it's kind of a wonky name, but it stands for nonlinear summing.
Okay.
So what the plugin does is that there's 2 separate modes. There's a channel mode and a bus mode. And what they did was they modeled 3 different analog consoles and per channel. And so you throw that plugin on like any channel or whatever, or all channels, and then also like your master bus. And then it somehow does that, which is weird non-linear harmonic distortion shit that just analog hardware does. And it goes a long way in just getting that feel, like you're doing kind of with the tape saturation and the tube and all that kind of stuff. It's what I used before I switched to Misc Bus. I just had a template where it was just on every channel just a little bit, and it's one of those things when you solo A/B, you can't really tell, but like when you spit out an entire mix with it on everything, there's a different feel to it.
Yeah. I'm always open to whatever another version of this. So
it
I'll
could
check
be
it
a
out.
way to like streamline it down from 3 or 4 plugins to one, or if you like the sound of it better the way you are doing it, then obviously keep doing that. But
right, I gotta say, I for a while there I was in the Universal Audio kind of world, and I gotta say, to my ear, a lot of their stuff sounds better than the Waves stuff.
Oh yeah, it definitely does.
Yeah, but I just didn't like. I've always liked the idea that I can just take my laptop and mix anywhere on headphones, and I don't like the idea that I have to be tied to this interface to run the DSP. And I know they're switching to native stuff, but I don't know that it's. I don't know. I guess I should look into the native stuff, but I just before they had begun that switch, I was like, screw that. I'm just going to use the Wave stuff.
Yeah, but, I feel you on that. I don't really use any of the Universal Audio ones or anything that uses an iLok, either.
Yeah.
Because Waves and those ones, they just make it easier. Sure, like you said, sure, they might sound better, but sometimes you just want to be able to spit a mix out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And also they don't have, whatever, an 11-76 or whatever is great and all, but that's a lot of decision making that as I said, I'm trying to avoid. There's still quite a few knobs on that thing,
For your pads, I have to say I really like your chord voicings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you plunk those out on like a keyboard at your desk, or do you just drag out the notes?
What did I do? I think, I'm very much a MIDI editor kind of guy. So I think it's some combination. Like I'll play the chords that I want and then decide that, a different, what's the word?
Inversion?
You shift the notes around. What's that?
Inversion.
Inversion. Thank you. When a different inversion is going to be better, then I just start dragging the notes around.
Yeah.
But
cool.
it's, you know, I mean, honestly, it's been so long since I was actually a piano player that it doesn't come naturally to me anymore. Like kind of knowing, you know, my fingers naturally going to good voicings. So yeah, I like just visualizing and dragging notes around at this point.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. But this thing I actually did sort of play because I set the arpeggiator to as played so that it would play in the order that I hit the notes. So then I just, you know, kind of felt out like what order I wanted them in. That's why these notes are in bizarre order. So every now and then I feel like, you know, I do a little something that makes me feel like a musician, you know.
It's enough.
Yeah, exactly. Like, ooh, look what I played.
Oh, that's great. That was a great breakdown.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, hopefully it's interesting and maybe a little bit useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I don't think the guy found his rhythm, but you know, he asked for it a lot.
Oh, sorry, you cut out, Zach. What did you say?
Oh, I said I don't think the guy found his rhythm, but he did ask for it a lot.
It's a lifelong quest, let's be honest.
Well, this has been really educational for me because I think even when I'm doing electronic music, I still tend to think in terms of arranging and mixing like, you know, you have a band. And so if I have a synthesized bass line and it needs some oomph, I don't think, oh, well, you could just double the bass. I think, okay, you need to rewrite the part or change the EQ or something. And so seeing what you did, like the part where you had the two basses going simultaneously and then one dropped out when the power chords came in, you know, I never would have thought of that. I would have been, you know, driving myself crazy, like, oh, how come this EQ is not making it better? I don't know. And so,
Joe, if I could just tell you that that's what I did for the first day of working on this before I realized, oh, I could duplicate. It's a way too long trying to get that lower bass sound to pop.
yeah. So it's really been educational. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, I really would be very fascinated to see other people's. You know, it's just obviously the computers and the software allow us to do so many things that can now deviate from, you know, traditional arranging, mixing, composing, whatever. So it's so fascinating to see what other people's approaches are.
Mm.
Yeah, just watching someone else work is huge. Do you are you changing your snapping a lot when you're working in Ableton?
Oh, like the grid?
The grid, yeah.
Yes, quite a bit actually. Yeah, I definitely have my Command 1, Command 2 shortcut. It's like my fingers there quite a bit now that I think about it. Yeah, it's, you know, for when I'm looking at the big picture, it's always on whole note, but it's when I'm zoomed in, it's almost always on 16th note. But I'd always take it off the dynamic thing, you know, where it changes based on your zoom.
Right.
That drives me crazy. So I just change it.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Because when I zoom in too far and it's on 128th notes, it's like, that's not useful to me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we're right at the hour mark. I feel like we got through it. Maybe we should call it.
Sounds great. Well, thanks again for being interested. I really appreciate it. It's fun.
Yeah, this is great.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Yeah. Thanks for the run.
Yeah.
Hope to see more.
My
in the future.
pleasure. All right. I will see you on Discord.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Thanks,
Have a good
guys.
night, guys.